Welcome back, everyone, to a new podcast episode. I have a very special guest who I have literally been nerding out on all of her content, workshops, newsletter. I signed up for a consultation for her to help me deep dive into my business. Like, I am a big fan. Hannah
Aw.
Cole is on from Sunlight Tax. Thank you so much for being a human and doing the work that you do because it's so important. And like I was just saying before we hit record, I really appreciate the work that you do.
Oh, that makes me so happy to hear all of that,
Yes.
Kelly. All of
Yes.
it.
It's
Thank
true.
you.
It's genuinely true. So, for anyone who's listening who's new to your orbit, I know that they're going to be so excited that they found you because one of the biggest things that I hear from founders that I work with, creatives, emerging brands, maybe it's their first time building a business, or they've done it, but they want to do it correctly this time around. When it gets to taxes, and I'm raising both my hands here too,
Mhm.
the panic, the anxiety, the what the hell am I doing just washes over us. And then we don't know what to do. And we start doing things and then it stresses us out and then we don't feel confident. So, can you give us a little background of how you went from artist to working in accounting and now helping creatives understand taxes? Like, walk us through the origin story.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I've been a professional artist. I'm a painter.
Very
I'm been a
cool.
I've been a professional artist since 2005. That's when I graduated my MFA program and entered the world as a professional. I'm still an artist. I have a solo show in October. I was working on my paintings this morning.
I love
So
that, Hannah.
yeah, so I didn't like start this company and stop being an artist. I really was like, I'm all in on being an artist. And so I guess I just always want to speak to the community of creative people who have
Mhm.
supported me for what has now been a long journey. Because I think the magic of being a creative person is how generous creative people are with each other.
Mhm.
This does not translate into the world of bankers and accountants and um, it's just such a cool community. And what I see is that we have all these superpowers that we don't give ourselves credit for, but we a lot of times lack some of the skills and tax. Who wants to spend their time reading the tax code? I mean, like
Right.
everyone wants to avoid that. But I feel like what I see is that creative people so often like blame themselves. They think that they're broken because they don't know how to do this. And I'm like, well, did your art school teach you this? Like, you're not the, I feel like there was a little responsibility,
I
in
even
other
went to
places.
business school and we didn't
Really?
learn this. Yeah.
That's fascinating. I mean, I'm supposed to tell you my origin story, but I want to just give like an all the way origin, which is there's no
Yes.
tax education in this country. So all of us feel like we're behind and we're broken and we're confused, but,
Right.
but we allow these big tax companies to lobby the government to like hide the fact that 70% of US taxpayers are supposed to be able to file a tax return for free. Like, did you know that that's the law?
Wow.
You
Kicking off
didn't.
the show strong with a fun accounting fact. No, I did not know that.
Oh, yeah, but because they've been literally suppressing Google results. I mean, anyway, that is a whole rabbit hole. We could do a whole
Wow.
second show on that
Wow.
one.
Count me in. I want to
All right.
know all of that.
But anyway, the point is like you're not broken. You have tons of superpowers. And if you had a little bit more structure and skill around, the hard and the scary stuff, the world is just a better place when there's more creative work going on. We're the empathy builders of our culture. And so I just want creative people, most who are my community, to thrive, like to do their amazing work. I never want to see another creative person quit because of money. That's the why. That's the why behind what I do.
That's an
So
incredible why. And I feel similar in the sense of I my heart really breaks when I see a creative who created a cool product and has a really great idea for a brand, but doesn't feel confident marketing themselves because they don't
yeah,
know how to communicate and talk about themselves
yeah.
and tell their story. And I know how hurtful that could be just to your own creative soul, because you're like, this is good, but I just don't know how to say it. So
Totally.
that's why I do what I do, because I know that struggle too. So I love how you're approaching it, that you don't want a creative to stop what they're doing because of money. And you chose the path of accounting because that is such an empowering tool to help and make that applicable for a creative's mind. Like even the way that you, one of your worksheets, the way that it's laid out, it's very visual. It makes sense. Like you literally follow the lines across. They're all different colors. And I was like, thank you. I needed a color chart. I needed a visual, right? Because many of us are visual learners too.
Totally.
So
Totally.
I just like those small things that you've integrated into your brand. I'm like, thank you. We get it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's because I didn't start as an accountant.
Right.
I'm an artist.
And I love that approach. So what happened that you have your art career and then you now became an accountant? Like what
Yeah,
happened?
sure. So when I graduated from my MFA program, taxes just like hit me like a shovel to the face. I just was like, oh my God, what? Like,
Mhm.
first of all, I had no preparation for the fact that I was going to have to do bookkeeping. I was not aware. I mean, you might think that's dumb, but I,
Oh, not at all.
and then I was like, wait a minute, quarterly taxes? What the hell are those? And I just like I had the journey that I now see other people have. And I was like,
Mhm.
wait, what? How am I supposed to do this? Not only that, I really wanted to be like financially responsible because I kind of, you know, as an artist, my income can be very irregular. And so anytime I get, I have some painting sales, I like want to squirrel it away. I'm like, okay, what's the best and smartest use of this chunk of money I have now? I don't know when the next one will come. Let's learn about some retirement accounts. So
Yep.
I did what a lot of people do. And I went to my dad's accountant and to pay for a professional to do my tax return. And I made what I now know in retrospect is a big mistake by thinking that paying for a tax return was going to get me like, you know, a lot of advice and guidance and explanation. Oh no. Oh no, it does not. And
That's a really important differentiator too that I would love to get into once you share your story, because that was
totally.
something I really learned from you just even recently.
Yeah,
So
it's a big
I'm
one.
writing this down, but yeah,
Okay.
keep going.
Awesome. So I sat in that room and I thought, and I was paying what felt like a lot of money to me at that time. And I thought I was going to get advice on opening a retirement account. I thought I was going to get some like explanation of how I should organize my bookkeeping and like, manage quarterly taxes because how am I supposed to know how those work, right?
Right.
And what I got was like, this guy looks at my numbers. And of course, they don't look that great yet at that early stage in my career. And I see that I'm being judged entirely based on my numbers, which were pretty modest, like very modest. And he's like, so when are you going to get a real job? And I was just like, I just flooded, my body just flooded with shame. I like, I realized like, oh my God. Oh, wait. It just like, I just realized it was not a safe space and it was not a place
No.
where I could ask any questions. He was kind of trying to hurry me out. It was super clear that he was impatient with the fact that I didn't know the terms. Like, I didn't know the difference between a Roth and a traditional IRA, which to an accountant, that's a dumb question. But to any human being, like, did you come out of the womb knowing the difference? Like,
Right.
someone has to tell you at some point, and I was at that point. So it was so humiliating that I came out in a fury. Like, first I was sad and upset and felt shame, and then I was mad.
Hmm.
The anger was part of the motivator for me starting this company. But the second, if you let me tell another story.
Please. I'm loving everything you're sharing. And I'm like bobbing my head around. If anyone just listening, I'm like, uh-huh. Mm-hmm. I get it.
Yeah, so I actually had to stop in the design and branding world on my way to starting Sunlight Tax. Actually,
Interesting.
yeah, I was a project manager and then an account executive. I don't even know the terms at a design and branding at an interactive design agency in New York City. And
Cool.
it was a wonderful place to work. I loved it. I loved it so much. And I was there to try and glean what I could from the design world, thinking maybe this will be my like day job and not my steady money. So I was like constantly asking the designers, like, okay, how do you do this? How do you work this? How do you learn this program? Like, how do you get ideas? What is UX design, UI design?
Mm-hmm.
Totally new world to me, which I adored. Um, and I kept hearing stories about how like project management was so hard because you have to deal with the creatives. And I was like, what? Like it just, I was
Mm-hmm.
like, that's not my experience because I am creative and everyone there knew it. And I was like really into the people who were creative. And so being the person who communicated about timeline and budget, it wasn't hard because I was like, they know how much I respect them. Like they knew we were a team, right? So I was like, oh, I think I have a little skill here. I think I
Mm-hmm.
have a little skill in being like, you. This doesn't have to be the enemy. We don't have to fight over this. Like we all want the same. We all want you to do your amazing work. We just have to do it within the parameters of this budget and this timeline. So
Right.
that was me kind of learning that. But then the other lesson I had at that agency was that the owner really didn't have like solid bookkeeping practices in place. And he did, unfortunately, what many people do running small businesses. He had no idea if he was actually making a profit.
Yes.
And so he would, and this is a real classic for design agencies, is you get worried about money, but you don't actually know the answer. And so you go out and you get more work, right? You get a bigger contract, you sign more work, but then you have to hire the people to do it, right? So your expenses go up. So fundamentally, you are not fixing the problem by doing that. You're just amplifying the problem. So basically, finally he got, I put some pressure on him and he did it himself, set up bookkeeping, had to sit down with an accountant. As soon as that happened, he realized he was bleeding money. And pretty much within the week, every single one of us was called in and let go, and the company folded. So, so that
I
one.
was not expecting that plot twist. Wow.
Yeah, so
Wow.
that was another like sucker punch. Basically, I've been sucker punched by numbers throughout my career, and that has made me realize, oh, you really have to know what's going on or your business can fold. I mean, it's bad
I
news if
feel
you
that
really.
so much. Keep
Yeah.
going, Hannah. I'm so in. This is also perfect timing of things I've been thinking about too of my path and like what I'm seeing too. So what happened next? I'm so intrigued.
Well, I had a baby, and I don't know if
Oh,
you've heard, but having kids in New York City is a little bit expensive.
yeah, I've heard the rumors. I myself have opted out of that, but I've heard the
Yeah.
rumors.
Yeah, we pay more. Like childcare was more than a mortgage in New York. It was
Wow.
insane. So basically, that was just a crystallizing moment for me where the economics of my life just did not work anymore. And
Right.
so these labor intensive paintings that I made, suddenly I had to pay someone 20 bucks an hour to be with my baby while I made them. And that just, the sort of meager living I was making, that did not work. So I had
Right.
to figure something out. So basically, I was like, well, I think I know what the thing is I want to do. Like, there's this idea for a company that I've kind of had. Like, there's no good service out there for creative people to like be empathetic and safe and non-judgmental and teach them about the things they need to know, like bookkeeping and taxes. Maybe I'm just going to start that company. So that's exactly what I did. I went back to school, went down
So
to
you
Bristol
went, yeah,
College.
I was going to say, so you went back to school for
Mhm.
accounting.
I did. Yep.
And then what did that look like rolling out the company and the brand?
Yeah. Well, I think it's probably I mean, just I because I had worked at that branding and design agency, I had a sense for it, which I wouldn't have if I hadn't. Like such a important skill.
Right.
Um so I had a real sense. I had been through the branding process with other companies, like our agency doing that work for clients. And so I had a sense of what it took. And I'm really pleased that it was like a holistic sense, because I knew that a brand is not just your colors, right? Your
Right.
colors, and font, and a logo. I really wanted like a feeling, like
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to feel warm, feel transparent. Was gifted my name actually by my boss. He was like, I think you should call yourself this. And I was like, oh my God, that's the best name I've ever heard. And so I never
I
looked
was
back.
going to ask you where Sunlight Tax came from. Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I want to send him a bottle of champagne every year. It's just I'm so happy about the name.
I love it. So when did you officially launch Sunlight Tax?
um, Officially in 2016.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And how have you seen? I well, I have so many questions. One, well, before I get to the questions, I just want to say the way that you have your from like a brand nerd myself, the way that you have like your opt-in to your email sequence to another product that you can learn on how to implement, and then your workshops and the master class that you have,
Mhm.
so well done.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I was nerding out on this. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to book a consult, and I want to tell her she did a great job of just the experience and helping someone feel like that deep exhale to take that next step. Because most likely, when you're looking for your type of service, you're feeling panic or anxiety and you're
Yeah.
just feeling so overwhelmed. And the way that you organized it felt very calm and grounding and like, hey, it's cool. Click here. I got you. Here's a guide. This is your. It felt very
Aw.
much like very personable, which is not an easy thing to do in an automated sequence and also, through a website. But I thought you did a really great job on it. So I just wanted to say that because I even sent it to a client. I'm like, she did a great job. And also, I know that you're stressing about taxes. So contact her.
That is, oh my gosh, you totally just made my day, Kelly. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you. It's those little things that I'm like, yes, like I just felt that comfort right off the bat.
Oh, that's so nice
And
to
I've
hear.
heard you speak too, which also I was like, "Ooh, this is who I want to talk to."
I love that. I mean, I think to speak to what you probably talk to your clients about all the time, it was not on my first try that I got all that right. Like there's a
Mhm.
lot of iterations, a lot of accidental spam emails. You know what I mean? Just like accidentally hitting send when I was learning how to do email automations, just like,
Oh my
oh,
gosh.
whoopsie, I just mailed my whole list. Like
Been there. Been there
that big.
myself. Yep. But no, I thought it was a really great experience just from someone who's new and just wants to see how you could
Oh,
support. I thought you did a great job. So
thank
you
you.
started, thank you, 2016. Now we're 2023. Where have you seen the shift of, I mean, during the pandemic, I'm sure a lot more people, were starting businesses.
Mhm.
Like what have you seen like shift just from people, what people are asking you, or is it the same? I would love to hear like how people are also diversifying their careers of getting different money income streams, like the
Mm.
creator economy. Just curious if you've seen anything from when you started.
Yeah, wow, that's no one's ever asked me that, but that is a great question. Um, COVID was its own bananas world. So
Right.
much happened. Obviously, all of the performing artists I serve were like devastated. And not only were all their gigs canceled, but most of them were in the service industry as their day job, which also
Wow.
got tanked, right? So like that my client population, it's not all performing artists. Like I serve basically the weirdos, right? Like
I
everybody
love
who
it.
kind of doesn't fit with
Hmm.
your dad's accountant. Um, Everybody was suffering. I mean, it was really rough. Although I will say, actually, interestingly, in COVID, muralists did fantastic. Um, I just kept noticing that my muralist clients were getting tons of work. And I think because everybody was indoors and a lot of places like were trying to do outdoor things. So if you could show a sign of life on the outside of a building, it was like everybody was like, if they'd ever thought of doing a mural, it was go time. And so
That's really
everybody,
interesting.
yeah, that was like a little trend I spotted. Um, yeah, the other stuff was just bananas. There were three new huge tax bills and PPP loans and title
Right.
loans and the shuttered venue operators grant program, which oh my gosh, just on and on. There was so much for me to learn. I had a serious bout with burnout after
I am
COVID.
sure you did because there was so much happening so rapidly, and
Yeah,
especially for creatives in general. At that time, I was marketing
yeah.
director of a city block that was based off of curated experiences and small
Wow.
businesses. And we were trying to like figure out how to adapt and like change it online, but it was like it's a it's a location. Like there's only so much you could do and try to
Yeah,
learn that on the fly and storytell and shift. So, and we actually invested in murals. So it's really funny that you said that
that's
because I'm like,
interesting.
yep, we did do that. So speaking of the business now, and
Mhm,
really that it sounds like you've always really niched down in creatives, which is awesome.
mhm.
What are you seeing now? What questions that people have for you or anything that you're like, I want to make sure that this is getting out there, anything that you see is still kind of like a little funky?
Yeah. Um, a lot of people have turned what used to be a hobby into a real business.
Okay,
That's a
I see
cool,
that.
that's a cool thing to see. Um, I definitely get a lot of questions. It's one of like I do these short one-off consultations. You're signed up for one. We're going to have
I'm
this
so
chat.
excited.
But one of my favorite things to talk about and one of the most frequent, like, I see the people preview the questions they have as they book. And so I get a sense of like what we're going to be talking about. So much about just like the technical stuff, like, do I need an LLC? My friend said I should have an S corp, but I don't know what that means. Those kinds of questions. Those are really perennial. I wouldn't call those trendy, but what I have found is that um, they're really naughty. Like there's a lot of like teasing out that you need to do. You need to understand why you would want to get an LLC and if it's applicable to you, because it's not always, and why you would get an S corp. And there's a real issue where like tax and accounting, or sorry, like accounting and the law kind of sit
Hmm.
side by side and they intersect a little bit. And I just recorded a podcast. I have a podcast, the Sunlight podcast. And
Oh, I've sent it to clients.
oh nice.
Yeah, I'm like, listen to her podcast.
I'm a little shy to say this out loud, but I just recorded a total rant because
Ooh,
I've seen lawyers step into the tax stuff and say incorrect things to people, and it makes my head explode. I'm like, you stick to the legal advice, like stick to your zone, because like you are talking about stuff and saying things that are absolutely wrong. And so I find like sorting out those things is really important. Um,
I heard you speak on a panel and you
mhm,
spoke about LLC versus S Corp, and in
mhm.
particular in New York City, where I'm located. And it was something that was on my mind.
Uh-huh.
And I was literally going to enter it into the chat to ask a question, and someone had just asked it. But I thought you articulated it so well and made it really much more applicable to see if it was a right move or not yet or doesn't need to be, because
Yeah.
I think that what I see in my space is that a lot more information is being shared, which is awesome, but
Hmm.
also a lot more information is being shared. So it's a lot
Yes,
more
totally.
to sift through and being like, but wait, I thought I was doing this right, but what about this and what about that? And I see that a lot with people with marketing. They're like, but what
Mhm.
about this trend or what should I be doing with content? I'm like, we're hold on. Like all of that could be true. I'm not saying one thing's right or wrong or,
Mhm.
is for you or not. But now it's like before, I feel like in general is just getting information out, but now there's so much information and it's now discerning what's applicable to you or not. And I thought you did a
Yeah.
really great job breaking that down. And it helped me personally understand that an S Corp isn't the right decision for me as of today and
Mhm.
probably a year ahead. And I just want to thank you because I was like, now I get it. Okay.
Yay.
It
I'm
really
so
helped me
glad.
understand.
I think like exactly like you said, it's that like fire hose of shared information that is
Right.
both good and bad. Like you you do not need to do what Tony Robbins is doing right now with his business
Right.
because he is running a much larger operation. Like
Right.
you may get
Totally.
there and good for you, but we can hang on a second before we do all the Tony Robbins stuff. You can start over here with the like just at the basics stuff.
And
So
I appreciate that about you. And if anyone's listening who's like, wait, hold on, I don't even know what the difference is. Could you just give me like the really quick soundbite of the two things of LLC and S Corp, just for someone to
absolutely.
understand and also hopefully even out the playing field if they've heard those words and they're like, I don't know exactly what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think people get confused because they both have corporation in the title.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think lawyers get confused if I'm being completely baldly honest with you. Um, so an LLC is a legal entity and it creates a protection for it. It puts the function of an LLC is to put a legal shield in between your business assets and your personal assets so that if somebody sues you, yes, they can come after your business assets. Like you're not going to be able to stop that. But they can't get your personal assets. And most people's wealth is personal. So your mortgage, your car, your kids' college fund, your retirement, all that stuff is shielded. That's the role of an LLC. So really the question you want to ask, do I need an LLC, is what are your odds of being sued? Because
Right.
that's the point, right? It's about lawsuits. So do I need to shield my personal assets? As an art, I will tell you this, as Sunlight Tax, I am an LLC. Like when
That
you
makes sense.
are giving tax advice and et cetera, yeah, you want protection. As a painter, I don't have an LLC and I never have, and I probably never will because I don't have open studio events. So I don't even have the risk of people tripping and falling in my space. When people are seeing my work, they're in my gallery, my gallery is hosting it. And so the gallery, they have insurance. So like, I don't really need an LLC personally as an artist. Please understand like your situation.
Everything
I'm
is
not giving
different.
legal or
Yep.
tax advice on this podcast. This is
Yep.
just education.
Education.
But you have to assess your own situation. A lot of people I find just form an LLC because they heard it somewhere or a friend said so, and they don't even understand what it means or what it does. And please don't do things in your business that you don't understand. That's just not a good thing to do. So the S Corp, and here's where the lawyers get confused. You file an S Corp election with the IRS. It is a tax thing. It is not a legal thing. And it is literally
Okay.
what we call a tax entity, but not a legal entity. So it has no legal protection. And you and I both witnessed somebody say something other than that on this call we
Yes.
were on. And I was like,
Yes.
I
No,
was
I saw
having,
I was like, ooh, she's fired up.
I
Minutes in.
was, I was, I was having some feelings.
Yeah.
But an S corporation it's a tax entity. You elect that status with the federal government, with the IRS. And PS and LLC, you form your LLC, you register it at the state level. So Kelly, you would get a New York based LLC and you would register with the Secretary of State of New York.
Right.
If you were to form an S Corp, and I'm not advising that, but if you did, you'd file paperwork with the IRS. So that's federal.
Got it. Got it.
But the S Corp, really the role of it's like it gives you a certain kind of tax structure that is advantageous once you make a certain threshold of income or of profit. And it's very, very important that you understand that, because I see this all the time, that people form an S Corp because their friends are doing it or somebody
Mhm.
said it and they don't understand what it is. and they're actually losing money by having one and giving themselves a second tax return to do and an earlier tax deadline, which is not a lot of fun. Um, and they're actually getting no benefit. They're actually spending money they don't need to spend to have that S corp.
When you
So
broke that down, because I literally was talking with a friend because she just created her S corp, and she's like, maybe you should do this, and I was like, I don't know. And then you broke it down. I was like, okay, that was perfect timing. Thank you, Hannah. That really broke it down. And it really is helpful just to have that very basic understanding so that you don't put that pressure and have that anxiety that you need to be doing all these things at once right out the gate. Like, there's
yeah.
things that maybe in the future make sense, but you don't have to do them all this second, and just really seeing what works for you. One question, the biggest question that I wanted to ask you today,
Yeah.
and you touched upon it before, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget, is now that you really have honed in on teaching people on how to
Mm-hmm.
do this. So you have a program, you do consulting, you have a great download, you have great workshops. How does that work? So if someone, I know many people who are listening, they are founders of emerging brands. They're in maybe in those early-ish years where they're getting themselves sorted. Maybe they were a hobby business and now they're a real company.
Mm-hmm.
Or, they really just want to structure it so they feel confident in the growth. What do you really specialize in the education piece to help them get organized with their taxes and bookkeeping?
Oh, I love that. Well, kind of my flagship offering is a program called Money Boot Camp. And it's a self-study program. Like when you join it, you get the whole thing right up front, day one. So you can go right to the part you want to. But basically, it's kind of two parts. There's the sort of like setup part, where you like set up bookkeeping that, I have a little bit of special sauce in how I have people set up bookkeeping. I do it with an orientation towards making your taxes easier, because for most small businesses, and this is really important, most small businesses need bookkeeping basically for tax reasons. Like that's the major impact, whether it's paying your quarterly taxes, knowing what you owe, and tracking your deductions. Those are kind of the big reasons that a small
Right.
business needs bookkeeping. Most people make this mistake of setting up bookkeeping that is super fancy, super complicated, double entry bookkeeping, and that's fine, but they don't understand it, and it's just far more than they need, and they find that it doesn't actually track to taxes, and so they end up having to recalculate stuff every year because the bookkeeping isn't set up to make the tax part flow really easily. So this is sort of, because I'm a tax specialist. Like my license, I'm an enrolled agent. I'm licensed by the IRS. I am a tax person. So I'm really
Right.
oriented towards like, this is really why you need this. So let's focus on the thing that is driving you crazy and making you pull out your hair
Right.
versus like, accounts receivable, da, da, da. Those things are great, but they're really built for like Coca-Cola and,
Right.
huge public corporations. Like you just don't need all of that stuff. So I guess I kind of like to orient towards like, well, where are you really at now? And what's your 5-year horizon look like? Let's stay in that zone rather
Yeah,
than, do all the things, because you get overwhelmed, right?
totally. And I like how you focus on organizing simply your bookkeeping, understanding what you're going to need to file your taxes,
Mm-hmm.
and then those damn quarterly taxes that could feel so overwhelming. I'm
Yeah.
in that's why I booked a consult with you. I'm like, I need to better organize this because it gives me, again, so much anxiety.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it's different. It's what you're doing, what it really stood out to me. It's not just like, here's how to file your taxes, because I feel like that's, you know, you could go to, like you said, your dad's accountant to actually file your taxes. But the space in the market that you saw that you really have filled in is the education
Mm-hmm.
around that. So when you go to that tax appointment or however you submit your taxes, you feel confident in what you're
Yeah.
bringing to the table. And that for
I
me is like what you do.
Yeah, thank you for seeing that. I really do think that that is kind of my best and highest purpose, is
Yeah.
not really like, there's tax software, there's accountants, tax prep is a commodity and you can really get it anywhere. But knowing what the hell is going on in your taxes, knowing how you could get a better result, and
Yeah.
knowing what questions, if you are working with an accountant, knowing how to ask them questions so that you'll get answers where you learn how to get the better result, like how to, be an accountant whisperer so you can get them out of their
Hmm.
little, oh, 1031 exchange. Like you got to get them
Right.
out of that. They don't speak English to human beings very
Right.
easily. And you have to be
Right.
like, all right, let's talk about tax shelters that I can use this year. Like,
Right. Right. Right.
yeah.
And, when you go to an quote unquote normal accountant and you explain what you do, a lot of blank stares
Oh,
of like,
yeah.
wait, hold on. So you do contract work and then you had income over here and then you did consulting over here. And they're like,
Yeah.
they look at you like you have 10 heads and you're like, I don't know. I don't know what to explain. Yes, I always say just marketing. I work in marketing because like trying to explain it and they're just confused by me so much. So the fact that you understand from like the creative side, I think also is really huge so that
Mhm.
creatives don't have to explain why it's maybe coming in from so many different channels or looks differently. Like that's already understood. So
Totally.
that anxiety about explaining also what you're bringing to the table is diminished. And you're able to just like look at it and understand it and be like, okay, this is a better way of approaching it for you personally.
Yeah. And I mean, let's talk about the safe space element. Like, I
Yeah.
felt shame and humiliation when I went to the first accountant I ever went to. And I mean, I will, just to give you a window into my world, Kelly, when I am talking to people about their money, it is the most intimate topic of all. People would rather tell me about their sex life than talk about their money. Like,
Yes.
like it is, I really take seriously like the honor and the privilege of getting to hear this like deepest and most vulnerable place that people go to. And I can't imagine opening up like that around an accountant who's like doesn't even get why you've got 6 1099s or
Right.
2025. But like I hear about, economic abuse between partners. I hear women
Mm,
kind of, I can tell when a woman is gearing up for a divorce. I get let in on things that are so intimate, so vulnerable. I actually have heard a lot of wealthy women have come to get consults with me. And I'm like, listen, I really don't specialize in like high income stuff. You probably don't want to work with me. And they say, no, I do, because I'm being bullied. I have an accountant. I have the best that money can buy, but I'm being bullied by him. And I need you to explain it to me.
wow.
Yeah. So I take that sort of
Wow.
emotional side of the work very, very seriously. And I think honestly, I mean, if accountants out there wanted some branding tips, I think if you took that seriously, you'd get more business. But anyway, it's just like it's a real privilege to be in that space. And I wouldn't open up like that to somebody who's shaming me.
No, absolutely not. Um, I know that so many people who are listening that are like, okay, I've been looking for you. I'm so happy I found you. You were the person, the
Oh.
missing link. So how can people work with you? Get into the loop of all the things that you offer. Like walk us through it.
Sure. Well, if you want to get that sort of gentle intro that you were so
Mm-hmm.
nicely talking about, Kelly, I have a visual guide to your tax deductions. And so if you just want to download that, first of all, it's just an awesome resource. I made it because rather than like ask an accountant a question about a deduction and then forget it 20 minutes later or 5 days later, it's a one-page thing. You print it out, you stick it by your desk, and then it's like it's there for you. It's just a reference guide.
Right.
And it's rainbow colored.
Which I really liked.
So you can get that at my website, sunlighttax.com/deductions guide. And there's actually 6 versions. You can pick the one that fits you the best.
Yes, I saw that. I thought that was really cool.
Thanks. One day I will do something with that, maybe do a special class just for designers but I
Yeah,
haven't.
it was cool how you broke it down per industry, right? It was
Mm-hmm.
what
Yeah.
type of business, creative business someone has. I like that was something I did know. I was like, ooh, this is cool.
Thanks.
You're
It's a little
welcome.
complicated on the back end. I don't
Oh, I'm sure.
necessarily recommend it, but on the front end, you can pick which guide is the best. So that's nice.
Yes.
Um, and I also I have a podcast where, I just explain stuff. I talk about, in fact, my most popular episode, Kelly, is the one called Do I Need an LLC?
Yep.
So obviously that one is getting a lot of traction. I can see from the numbers that people need that one. But I have lots of explainers, and basically the inspiration for the episodes. I mean, I will never identify a client ever, ever, ever unless I have like explicit permission. So, but you are hearing real anonymized stories about people I'm interacting with. And so like I see a lot of confusion. And so I'll usually make a pod. Once I see the same issue come up 2 or 3 times, I'm like, okay, this is a podcast. And I
Right.
start like I was seeing all these people confuse itemized deductions with their business deductions. In fact, I even had a couple clients like throw out their business receipts because some accountant had said to them, "Oh, you don't itemize anymore." And they thought that meant business deductions. And so they stopped tracking the stuff in their business. And I was like, no.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I made an episode about that. So if you're hearing this and you're like, wait, what's the difference? I have an episode for you.
You got an episode. Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. So that's the Sunlight podcast. And all of this is at my website, sunlighttax.com. But there's at sunlighttax.com/podcast. You can find those, all those
In the
episodes.
money course,
And Money Boot Camp. So
money boot camp.
that is my flagship program. I only told you about part one, the organizing part. The part two is growing your FU money. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, dropping
Yeah,
that.
you could say whatever you want. Yeah.
Growing your fuck you money.
That's what we want. Fuck you money. Yeah.
Is what we want. Because I think, much in the same way, like I'm sure, Kelly, that you can relate to this, that like people have, like creative people, we have an authentic thing we want to show the world, but there's something in the way. For you, you're teaching people how to talk about it in a way that feels true to what they're doing, right? For me, I'm trying to teach people like money's not the bad guy. In fact,
Right.
it can be an accelerant for this amazing work that you're doing. So let's do that part of it. Let's make sure you have it.
Love it. Love
Yeah.
it. Because there's so much too that I think creatives and just people right now growing up, that money was bad or money was evil, or was told all these weird stories around money. So I love how you're changing that narrative to have a different way of looking at it, to make it be like, okay, I am going to empower myself with this information. Like, this is really important.
Totally. And I feel like I hope we've kind of touched on this, but I think it's so important to make sure people feel like you, not just is this not bad, but you deserve it. You need to rest. This is how you rest. This is how you make your work impact more people. Like it's, and I think people need to see themselves in the work. So I like to show a lot of examples of women and BIPOC and queer people, and just like, hey, I know that like when you go to, quote your dad's accountant, you're seeing like the same white dude in khakis every time, but actually investing is for Black women and like queer people and non-binary people. Investing is for all of us. So.
I love that so much as a queer person myself who, am trying to figure out investing and like learning and educating myself in a space that I haven't. Even I went to school for business, and a lot of this was never on my radar. I really appreciate that because I think there's still such a gap. So I love that you touch upon that.
Yeah, that gap is real. I mean,
It
economists
is.
have a word for it. The wealth gap is really big between men and women, between like queer people. The trans wealth gap is enormous, actually really scarily enormous.
I agree.
Yeah, so it's important. We need that fuck you money.
Yeah. And just imagining the world of more people like us with that.
Yeah.
I think some really cool things will happen.
Totally. And I honestly, money says a lot. Like your money actually does a lot in the world. And I mean, I teach about ethical investing, which we now call ESG, environmental social governance.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole world where, I mean, it's not a perfect world. There have been some problems in it. So it's not a total panacea, but
Right.
like this is a whole other life that I have had. I was like kind of a money activist in college. Um,
Mm.
I worked on getting the Yale Corporation to divest of its tobacco holdings.
Wow.
And we won, by the way, $20 million out of tobacco. Um, but it took
Oh,
three
cool.
it took 3 years and a lot of work and it just a hell of a lot of boring meetings. They tried to meeting us to death, which is how this stuff goes. But that's where I learned that money really is power and that you can use your money to put power in the right place. So I think you can correct wrongs with money, in fact, which is all the more reason why people who are ethical, people who care about making the world a better place, and people who represent the full spectrum of the world better need to
Mm-hmm.
have their money saying what their values are more. Because if you're not in there, who is representing what money's doing? It's, you know, ravaging the planet.
Yeah.
There's a lot I'd like to correct
Well,
about what we
going
do in the world
a
is.
few things going on for sure. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much. I really personally needed this conversation. And I know
Aw.
so many people who will be like, this was amazing. And I listen to it once a week as like a pep talk slash motivator. And I just really appreciate the work you do. I'm really excited for my consultation also to deep
Thanks.
dive into my things, to get myself better organized. And just thank you so much for being you and sharing your story so honestly and authentically, and just the vibe that you bring to accounting just makes me like excited about it. So thank you. And everyone listening, go follow Hannah at Sunlight Tax, download, check out the course, all the things she has to offer. And just thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Kelly. It was so much fun to
So
talk to you,
much
and I
fun. Yeah,
appreciate it.
same.
Awesome.
And I'll see everyone on the next episode.